more than 500 feet above the largest freshwater lake on Earth. A 5-story tower of blue-toned stone stands watch over a harbor city. It was paid for by a Norwegian immigrant who arrived with almost nothing and sold furniture until he was rich. It was dedicated by one future king of Norway and rededicated 72 years later by his son. A few steps away, a Japanese temple bell hangs in a quiet garden at the end of one of the strangest and kindest stories to come out of the Second World War. This is Enger Hill in Duluth, Minnesota. Come climb it with me. We are in Duluth, Minnesota, at the far western tip of Lake Superior, the westernmost point of the entire Great Lakes system. The city is built on a steep hillside that climbs from 607 feet at the water to over 1,400 feet on the heights, terrain so dramatic that Duluth has been called the San Francisco of the Midwest. Enger Hill rises on the west side of town, above the neighborhood known as the West End. Our walk today is short in distance, well under a mile, but it packs in gardens, a peace bell, sweeping overlooks, and the climb up the tower itself. Every foot of it looks down on one of the great inland harbors of the world. The trail starts easy, winding through mature trees and flower beds on the crown of the hill. It is a warm July afternoon, and the lake below is throwing up that cool breeze Duluth is famous for, the natural air conditioning of a city that leans against 30,000 square miles of cold water. Enger Park is a favorite wedding spot for locals, and it is easy to see why. Stone terraces, picnic grounds, and rock gardens spill down the hilltop in every direction. But this place is more than a pretty park. Nearly everything here, the land, the tower, even the golf course next door, traces back to one man's thank you note to a city. Before the stories of towers and kings, take a moment for the water on the horizon. Lake Superior is the largest freshwater lake in the world by surface area, so vast it behaves more like an inland sea, with fog banks, shipwrecks, and its own weather. The Ojibwe people who lived along these shores long before any city stood here knew it as Gichigami, the Great Sea, and the name still fits. The lake never truly warms, even in July, and it shapes everything about life in Duluth, from the climate to the economy. From up here, you can watch its moods change by the hour. As the path climbs, the city starts to appear in slices between the trees. Rooftops step down the hillside below us, and beyond them the flat blue plain of the harbor opens out. Duluth is a long ribbon of a city, stretched more than 20 miles along the shore, and from this hill you can trace nearly all of it. The grade is steady but gentle, a family-friendly climb on wide paths. Keep an eye out for the dark bedrock breaking through the soil beside the trail, because that stone has a story over 1 billion years old. Roughly 1.1 billion years ago, the middle of North America began to tear itself apart along a great arc geologists call the Mid-Continent Rift. Molten rock flooded up through the crack, cooling into thick layers of dark volcanic and intrusive rock, including the gabbro and basalt that underlie Duluth. The rift eventually failed, and the continent held together, but it left behind some of the hardest and oldest exposed rock in the United States. Enger Hill is part of that ancient volcanic pile. When the glaciers of the last ice age finally melted back, their waters pooled against this rocky rim and became Lake Superior. That ancient bedrock gave Duluth a signature building material, a hard, fine-grained stone with a distinctive blue-gray cast that locals simply call bluestone. Quarried from the volcanic rock of the hillside, it turns up in retaining walls, bridges, and landmark buildings all over the city. When the time came to raise a memorial tower on this summit, there was never much doubt about what it would be made of. The tower ahead of us is faced in that local blue-toned stone, rough cut and laid up like a medieval keep. It looks like it grew straight out of the hill, and in a sense, it did. The path levels out through Enger Park's famous gardens, where perennial beds and stonework terraces have been tended for generations. In high summer, the beds are at their peak, and the contrast is striking. Delicate blooms in the foreground and a working industrial harbor spread out a quarter-mile below. Volunteers and city gardeners keep this hilltop in shape, and it shows. Stone stairways duck between the flower beds and connect one terrace to the next. It is the kind of park that rewards slow walking, so we take our time. The city below carries the name of a French adventurer who paddled through in 1679. Daniel Greysolon, Sieur du Lut, explored the St. Louis River estuary at the head of the lake, working to open trade routes and broker peace between nations in the region. His name, respelled the American way, became Duluth. For nearly 2 centuries after his visit, the head of the lakes remained fur trade country, far from any map of cities. The town itself was not platted until 1856, and even then it nearly died in its crib, until a railroad changed everything. Here is our first full overlook, and it stops you in your tracks. The whole Duluth Superior Harbor Basin spreads out below, ore docks and grain elevators, and the long thread of Minnesota Point dividing harbor from open lake. Freighters the length of 2 football fields look like toys from up here. It is the classic postcard view of the Twin Ports, and honestly no photograph does it justice. Take it in for a moment, because the story of how this quiet fur post became one of the busiest ports in America is a wild one. On New Year's Day of 1869, Duluth counted just 14 families. Then the financier J. Cook chose it as the northern terminus for a railroad from St. Paul, and the rush began. By the 4th of July that same year, the town held 3,500 people, a 200-fold explosion in 6 months. Sawmills, docks, and hotels went up almost overnight as speculators bet everything on the head of the lakes. Duluth would boom, bust, and boom again, but from that winter on, it never stopped believing it was destined for greatness. The young city even gave itself a nickname to match its ambition, the Zenith City of the unsalted seas. By the turn of the century, the boast was not far from the truth. Iron ore from Minnesota's ranges, grain from the Dakotas, and lumber from the North Woods all funneled through Duluth's docks and out to the world. Mansions climbed the hillside as shipping and milling fortunes were made. The steep streets, the grand architecture, and the working waterfront below us are all leftovers of that gilded age, when this remote lake port punched far above its weight. We follow the rim of the hill now, and the views come and go between the trees like slides in a projector. Each gap frames a different piece of the harbor, an ore dock here, the canal there, a lake boat holding station offshore. Below us runs Skyline Parkway, the scenic drive that traces this hillside for nearly the entire length of the city. Hawks ride the updrafts along the bluff at eye level. It is hard to make forward progress when every 20 steps offers a new excuse to stop and stare. That harbor below is a genuine heavyweight. The port of Duluth is the farthest inland port in the world that ocean-going ships can reach, some 2,300 miles from the Atlantic by way of the St. Lawrence Seaway. It is also the largest and busiest port on all of the Great Lakes. Iron ore still leads the cargo list, feeding steel mills down the lakes, joined by grain, coal, limestone, and even giant wind turbine parts. Watching a 1,000-foot freighter thread the canal from this hilltop is one of the great free shows in Minnesota. Guarding the harbor entrance is Duluth's most famous landmark, the aerial lift bridge. It began life in 1905 as the first transporter bridge in the United States, ferrying a hanging gondola of passengers and wagons across the ship canal. Later, it was rebuilt into the lift bridge you see today, its whole road deck rising like an elevator to let freighters pass beneath. From Enger Hill, you look down on the bridge and the canal at once, a perspective even most locals rarely get. When a big laker approaches, the bridge answers its horn with a salute of its own. The path now bends toward the quietest corner of the hilltop, a garden unlike anything else in Duluth. Stone lanterns and carefully placed plantings signal that we are entering a Japanese-style garden, laid out around a single remarkable object. Ahead, an open timber shelter protects a large bronze bell. It seems, at first, an unlikely thing to find on a hilltop in northern Minnesota. But this bell, and the friendship it represents, took a 70-year road to get here, and the story begins with a warship that carried this city's name. First, though, meet the man whose name is on the hill. Bert Enger was born in Norway in 1864 and came to America as a young immigrant with little more than willpower. His first furniture business, in the small town of Pine City, failed. He tried again in Duluth, and this time the Enger and Olson furniture store grew into one of the leading retailers in the region. Enger never forgot that this hillside city had given a broke Norwegian farm boy his second chance. He decided, in a very Scandinavian way, to repay the debt quietly and completely. We wander the garden path slowly because this corner of the park invites it. The plantings are kept low and calm, framing the bell shelter and opening toward the lake beyond. On a July afternoon, the sound up here is mostly wind, birdsong, and the far-off rumble of the port. It is a deliberate kind of peace boxed into a few hundred square feet. And peace, in the most literal sense, is exactly what this garden was built to honor. In 1921, Bert Enger put up the money that helped the city buy this summit, then known as Grand Mountain, so it could become a public park instead of private real estate. When he died in 1931, his will carried the plan further, leaving a sizable share of his estate to the people of Duluth. The bequest developed the park, expanded the golf course on the donated land, and funded a memorial worthy of the site. Duluth chose to build a tower on the very top of the hill. Enger did not live to see it, but his name would soon stand at the highest point on the skyline. Now to the bell. Across the Pacific on the coast of Japan's Chiba Prefecture sits the fishing town of Ohara, today part of the city of Izumi. Like Duluth, it is a working waterfront community that lives by its harbor. In the chaotic months after the Second World War, a bronze temple bell from Ohara was carried off to America aboard the cruiser USS Duluth, one of countless trophies scattered by the war. It ended up on display here in Duluth, half a world from home. What happened next is the reason this garden exists. In 1954, Duluth learned where its war trophy had come from, and the city made a decision that was rare for its time. It sent the bell home. The return to Ohara was met with extraordinary gratitude, and the two harbor towns began writing letters, then exchanging visitors, then building a genuine friendship across the Pacific. On October 3, 1990, Duluth and Ohara made it official, becoming sister cities. Ohara then gifted Duluth a replica of the bell, so that the friendship would ring on both shores of the ocean. That replica is the bell hanging in front of us. Here it is, the Japanese peace bell of Enger Park, deep bronze under its timber shelter, with the lake glittering behind it. Unlike most monuments, this one is meant to be used. Visitors swing the wooden striker and send a long, low tone rolling out over the hillside, a sound made for temples carrying across a Minnesota harbor. People up here tend to go quiet when it rings. It is a simple thing, a bell in a garden, but it stands for a war trophy turned into a handshake. Few city parks anywhere hold a better story. At the summit above the garden, Bert Enger's memorial finally took shape in 1939. Workers raised a 5-story observation tower, 80 feet of locally quarried blue-toned stone, rugged and unadorned on the highest point of the hill. There is no ornament to it, no statue, no inscription shouting for attention, just stone, stairs, and open arches framing the view. For a monument to a modest furniture dealer, the design feels exactly right. The city scheduled a dedication for June, and the guest list turned out to be remarkable. Leaving the garden, the path climbs the last rise to the tower itself, and up close the scale surprises you. The rough stone walls seem to lean out overhead, more fortress than park pavilion. Swallows cut circles around the upper arches. The doorway at the base is plain and open, with a stone stairwell spiraling up into the light. 5 flights stand between us and the best view in Duluth. Let's climb. On June 15, 1939, Crown Prince Olav of Norway and Crown Princess Martha stood on this hilltop and dedicated Enger Tower before a huge Duluth crowd. The royal couple was touring America that summer, and for a port city full of Scandinavian immigrants, their visit was close to a homecoming. It mattered that Norway's future king would climb a Minnesota hill to honor a Norwegian immigrant who had made good in the furniture trade. Within a year, Norway itself would be at war and the prince in exile. The stone tower on Enger Hill quietly kept its post above the lake through it all. Inside, the stairs wind upward past open arched windows, and every landing swaps in a new postcard. One flight frames the harbor, the next the endless blue of the open lake, the next the green ridge of the hillside running off to the southwest. The stone keeps the stairwell cool even in July. You can feel the wind strengthen with every level. Then the stairs open onto the top platform, and the whole world arrives at once. Crowning the tower is a green beacon that burns at night, visible for many miles by land and water. Sailors out on the lake and drivers dropping down the hill into town all know the little emerald star that marks Enger Hill after dark. From the platform beneath it, the top of the tower stands more than 500 feet above Lake Superior. That makes this modest stone look out one of the highest built viewpoints anywhere on the greatest of the Great Lakes. On a clear evening, the view runs past the city lights and simply falls off the edge of the world. From the open platform, the panorama is total. The aerial lift bridge, the ship canal, and the ore docks lie straight below, and the long sandbar of Minnesota Point stretches off toward Wisconsin. Together with Wisconsin Point across the water, it forms the largest freshwater behemoth bar in the world, 10 miles of sand thrown up by the lake itself. Superior spreads east until it merges with the sky. Behind us, the forested ridge rolls away inland. Duluth calls itself the Zenith City, and from up here the name needs no defending. The tower's story came full circle in 2011, after a major renovation restored the stonework and reopened the observation decks. Norway's King Harald V and Queen Sonja climbed Enger Hill on October 17th to rededicate the tower. Harald is the son of Crown Prince Olav, the man who first dedicated it 72 years earlier. Few small city parks anywhere can claim 2 royal dedications by father and son. For Duluth's Norwegian-American community, it was proof that the old bond across the Atlantic still held, as solid as blue stone. We spiral back down the cool stairwell and wander out into the late afternoon light. The gardens have picked up that golden hour glow, and the harbor below has gone soft and silver. It is worth one last slow loop past the overlooks, because this hilltop rewards lingering. Weddings, picnics, first dates, and quiet solo walks all share these terraces on a summer evening. The bell sits silent in its shelter, and the tower shadow stretches long across the lawn. Think about what this one small hilltop holds. Rock from a billion-year-old rift in the continent. A harbor that turned 14 families into the busiest port on the Great Lakes. A furniture dealer's thank you gift. A tower dedicated by a future king and rededicated by his son. And a bell that traveled to war and came home as a promise of peace. You can walk all of it in under a mile. That is the magic of places like Enger Hill, where the whole sweep of a region's story fits inside an afternoon stroll. If you find yourself in Duluth, give this hill an hour. Ring the bell gently, climb the 5 flights, and let the green beacon light up as the freighters slide out beneath the bridge. Enger Tower asks nothing of you but a little uphill walking, and it pays you back with one of the finest views in the Midwest. Bert Enger thought this city was worth a gift, and standing up here, it is easy to agree. Thank you for watching. Follow for more of the trails of the world.